I just heard on the radio a court ruling about minority businesses that is ridiculous. The court ruled that the Minority Business Development Agency of the federal government no longer has to just qualify minorities. They must also accept applications from whites, women, and others. So they've essentially eliminated the business development agencies that help small minority businesses around the country. And guess what? So far, the Biden administration said they're not going to appeal. They eliminate the quality educations in the inner city, putting us at a disadvantage, then don't want to give us a hand up with affirmative action, eliminated that. Now, knowing that they don't help finance black businesses around the country, now you're going to eliminate the federal program that does help with that. I mean, what's the deal here? They're taking back everything that black folks have fought for, just like they did back after slavery during the Reconstruction era. We had black banks, we had the Freedmen banks, we had black politicians, black Congress folks. Supreme Court came in, a conservative Supreme Court, and eliminated all of that. And unfortunately, that's what we're seeing now. We got to continue to fight, folks. Don't lay down. Stand up, fight back.
The ruling was a significant victory for conservative activists waging a far-ranging legal battle against race-conscious workplace programs, bolstered by the Supreme Court's ruling last June dismantling affirmative action programs in higher education. Advocates for minority-owned businesses slammed the ruling as a serious blow to efforts to level the playing field for Black, Hispanic, and other minority business owners who face barriers in accessing financial and other resources. Judge Mark T. Pittman on the United States District Court of the Northern District of Texas, who was appointed by former President Donald Trump, ruled that minority business development agencies' eligibility parameters violate the Fifth Amendment's equal protection guarantees because they presume the racial minorities are inherently disadvantaged. The agency, which is part of the United States Commerce Department, was first established during the Nixon administration to address discrimination in the business world. The Biden administration widened its scope and reach through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act in 2021, making it a permanent agency and increasing its funding to $550 million over 5 years. The agency, which helped minority-owned businesses get financial and government contracts, now operates in 33 states and Puerto Rico. According to its early yearly reports, the agency helped businesses raise more than $1.2 billion in capital in fiscal year 2022, including more than $50 million for Black-owned enterprises and more than $395 million for Hispanic-owned businesses. In a sharply worded 93-page ruling, Pittman stated that while the agency's work may be intended to, quote, alleviate opportunity gaps faced by minority-owned businesses, quote, two wrongs don't make it right, and the MBDA's racial presuming is a wrong. Ruled that while the agency technically caters to any business that can show their social or economic disadvantage, white people and others not included in the, quote, list of preferred races must overcome a presumption that they are not disadvantaged. The agency, he said, has been using the unconstitutional presumption for 55 years too many. Quote, today the clock runs out. Dan Lennington, deputy counsel at the Conservation Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, which filed the lawsuit, stated and called it a historic victory that could affect dozens of similar federal, local, and state government programs, which also consider people of certain races inherently disadvantaged. He also stated that the ruling will pave the way for his and other conservative groups to target those programs. Quote, we just think that this decision is going to be applied far and wide to hundreds of programs using identical language. Justice Department lawyer representing Minority Business Development Agency declined to comment on the ruling, which can be appealed to the conservative-leaning Fifth United States Circuit of Appeals in New Orleans. In court filings, the Justice Department cited congressional research showing that minority business owners face systematic barriers, including being denied loans at a rate 3 times higher than non-minority firms. often receiving smaller loans and being charged at higher interest rates. John F. Robinson, president of the National Minority Business Council, stated the ruling is, quote, a blow against minority owned businesses and does nothing to help minority owned businesses because they have already enjoyed access to federal resources through the Small Business Administration. Quote, it has the potential of damaging the whole minority business sector because there will be less services available to minority owned businesses. In a similar ruling last year, a Tennessee judge struck down a program run by the Small Business Administration that steered some government contracts towards minority owned businesses. Several other lawsuits have targeted governments and private sector programs designed to benefit minority owned businesses, including a case against the Fearless Fund, an Atlanta based organization that provides early stages funding to business owners by women of color. So let's just cover this real quick. A venture capital firm that has backed new companies like restaurant chains selling vegan and beauty brands like Tinted has become symbolic of the fight over corporate diversity policies since becoming a target of a lawsuit over a grant program for Black women. But the Fearless Fund is a tiny player in the approximate 200 billion global venture capital market. The Atlanta-based firm has invested nearly 27 million in some 40 businesses led by women of color since launching in 2019 and awarded another 3.7 million in grants. Collectively, those businesses employ about 540 people, up from 250 at the time of the investment. While the money has made a big difference to those businesses, Fearless Fund co-founder Arian Simone stated that it's a drop in the bucket compared to systematic changes needed to close the racial and gender gap in venture capital funding. Less than 1% of venture capital funding goes to businesses owned by Black and Hispanic women, and that is according to a nonprofit advocacy group, Digital Undivided. Just to get that number over 2% would take billions of dollars. Quote, it takes trillions of dollars to really move the needle, which is why I think the policy change needs to take place in order to collectively get us up to speed. Ms. Simone stated that she would like to see pension funds and other institution investors, for example, enact mandates for venture capital firms to fund a certain number of minority owned business companies. It's the sort of intentional policies that are under attack from conservative activist groups waging a legal battle against corporate diversity initiatives, an effort that has intensified since the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action in college admissions. The lawsuit against the Fearless Fund was filed by Edward Baum, the conservative activist who filed the affirmative action case before the Supreme Court. It targets the fund's Strivers Grant Contest, which awards $20,000 to Black women who run businesses, arguing it violates a section of the Civil Rights Act of 1866 prohibiting racial discrimination in contracts. Bloom's organization, American Alliance for Equal Rights, has also filed lawsuits against two law firms in Texas and Florida over fellowship programs for diverse candidates, accusing them of being discriminatory. In an interview, Bloom stated that his organization brought the case against the Fearless Fund after another woman-owned business brought the grant contest to their attention. Quote, a useful way of determining the fairness and ultimately the legality of policies is to apply the shoe on the other foot. A different venture capital fund's requirement that only white men are eligible for its funding and support would be considered legal. The Fearless Fund enlisted prominent civil rights lawyer, including Ben Crump, to defend against the lawsuit filed in the United States District Court in Atlanta. In court filings, the attorney have argued that Bloom's group has no standing because it represents three anonymous women who never applied for funding from the Fearless Fund. They also argue that the grants are not contracts but donations protected by the First Amendment. Meanwhile, Ms. Simone stated that the Fearless Fund continues to get thousands of applications for its program each week, illustrating the untapped potential of investing in women of color. The companies in its portfolio have found success in mainstream retail companies seeking to reach younger and more diverse customers. Why are Black business owners discouraged from applying for loans? The result is that Black entrepreneurs are more likely than white business owners to refrain from applying for loans because they believe they will be rejected. Some 37.9% of Black employer firms reported being discouraged compared to 12.7% of white-owned employer firms.
Another one.
Is it hard for Black people to get business loans? Black entrepreneurs face more challenges in qualifying for business loans. This is largely due to the generational racial wealth gap and institutional racism. Data from the Federal Reserve shows that Black business owners have a harder time securing funding for their businesses than white business owners.
Another one.
What are the struggles of Black entrepreneurs? Studies have shown that Black-owned businesses receive a disproportionately small amount of venture capital and bank loans compared to their white counterparts. This lack of access to capital can make it challenging to start or expand a business, limiting their ability to compete in the marketplace. So this is where we are. We got Judge Mathis, a great judge, somebody who is a Detroit native, who has been around for a very long time and seen a great deal of many things. And he has a certain understanding of the laws, the rules, and the regulations. And what he is doing at this moment in time is trying to inform Black people out there and also others that, hey, this is what conservatives are specifically doing. They are trying to overturn a lot of things that have originally been enacted in order to help Black people be able to succeed, in order to be able to give a helping hand to Black people in a lopsided type of war or a battle. This is what these things were for. And even with the amount of help that Black people have been able to receive, it still does not account for the overall majority of the wealth, of the venture capital that goes out to a lot of these businesses. And then you have somebody like Bloom, conservative, who comes along and tries to make a problem where there isn't one. And again, I really want to know, who are these supposed women who are hidden in the background, who applied and were magically denied? Again, if you're going to make this accusation, it's not like we're dealing with any type of accusation where somebody can, potentially lose their life or anything like this. You're literally stating that you applied and you were denied because of your race. So again, just as many Black people who have made this claim, they have stood there. You were able to see their name, their face, what they look like, and everything, right? You can connect that directly to the story. Why is it that these supposed women are staying hidden? That seems a little bit suspicious to me. That seems highly suspicious to me. But like I said before, this is how they like to do. These are the games that they like to play in order to change the landscape so it is more favorable for them and not for everybody else. And again, as stated before, the Black woman there, Miss Simone, she started that fund in order to help out Black women, in order to also help out minority women. For whatever reason, out of all of the areas that these supposed three women or whoever could go out there and get funding from, they decided, oh, we're going to look directly over here. We know who this is meant to help. We know who this is for, but we're going to sit up there and supposedly again, apply for it anyway and see what happens. So the best bet for Black people is to do it lineage, bloodline, and community based, where it's specifically dealing with the Black community. Now, some people sit up there and say, oh, but what if somebody who moves there and, they decide that they want to open a business? Well, you got an ample amount of different areas that you can go to around the United States and within that state and city to go get funding. You don't need to necessarily get the funding directly from the people of those communities who pull their money together in order to help out their people who are disenfranchised, who are trying to uplift, who are trying to build up, who are trying to establish something that they can pass down, something that they can be proud of, something that is going to be a monument for them, a cornerstone, a keystone for that community. Again, you're literally looking at how it is the system and the government and others work in tandem in order to dismantle any and all little minor advantages that Black people may have in order to help them when it deals with these battles and these wars out here for them to establish some type of business, because the real fear is the fact of successful Black businesses, and those businesses empowering not just that family, but other families and communities as well. The bigger fear is also Black people started to gain and understand the financial landscape directly out here and how to properly navigate that so that they can have some type of wealth base that they can create within their own community and spread that money amongst themselves and only themselves, which is, I want to note to a lot of people, the same practice that a lot of other communities do. The Arab community does it, the Jewish community does it, the Asian community does it, African communities do it, right? The Latin communities do it as well. In case in point, if you look at the Latin communities, they do a excellent and a beautiful job. You can look at the amount of businesses, you can look at all of the food trucks that they have directly out there, and they are flourishing across the United States because people in the Latin community are coming out to support their own people and to make sure that they are going to be okay. That is the exact same thing that Black people in America need to do at this moment in time, because you see how they're trying to dismantle and take away things law-wise, so then you just have to do it organically. That's something that they can't steal. That's something that they can't take away. The moment in time that you as a community hand over money to somebody else, they can't do anything about that. They can't decide, oh, we're going to create a lawsuit because you're only giving money to people in your own. Everybody does it. Literally, everybody does it. This is also one of the many key bricks on how America was built as well, by people supporting their own and people supporting their communities and making sure that their people and their businesses flourish.